You're listening to the Future Tech Health Podcast with Richard Jacobs. Until I reached age 40, I never realized the obvious, that we all have medical issues, or we at least have a family member or close relation that had, has, or will have them in the future. Medicine and biological systems are the final frontier. Until we've conquered death, figured out how life began, cured cancer, and understood our purpose in the universe, there's a heck of a lot to talk about when it comes to our health. Future Tech Health means I'll be covering futuristic topics that are actually already in clinical trials, or even starting to appear on shelves or by prescription, or available for your own use. We dive deep into stem cells, CRISPR-Cas9, the science of sleep, epigenetics, medical testing, cancer, ketogenic diets, stem cells, aging, regenerative medicine, and more. My goal for you, the listener, is to learn from these podcasts. You may very well learn something that may change the course of your life for the better, steer you towards a new career, or give you insight into addressing a serious medical problem. Remember, however, this podcast and its content is informational in nature only. No medical, tax, legal, financial, or psychological advice is being given. If you enjoy the podcast, please listen, subscribe, like, and share it with friends. Thank you. Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Future Tech and Future Tech Health podcast. I have Jonathan Hull. He's the head of business development at Thryve Inside, Thryve, inside.com. And they make probiotics that I've tried myself. They're refrigerated and they come to you and they're a bit customized and everything. So I'm glad that, I've spoken to them before. I want to have them back. So Jonathan, thanks for coming.
Thank you, Rich.
Yeah. So, I sped through it quick, but tell me about the whole concept of Thryve. What got the company started and going?
Yeah, absolutely. So Thryve originally started off as a microbiome testing company. And as you mentioned, the company has since evolved to do a pairing between probiotics and those tests. And so typically there's two phases to the journey with Thryve. The first is participants will usually seek out the company and do a microbiome test. After we get the test results back and generate a report, there is an offering of probiotics that can be chosen depending on the preference of the study participant or the customer. Okay. So tell me, how does a typical customer find you? What's going on with them where they say, all right, I need to try this? There's a range of reasons that people seek out Thryve or stumble upon us. The primary reason that we've encountered, and this has just sort of been in line with the evolution of the company, is that typically the most frequently sought out reason is that there's some GI or some sort of digestive distress. And usually through an online journey, folks will seek out probiotics. And more, I think that customers are realizing the importance of understanding what a healthy, normal GI tract looks like. And so the pairing between microbiome test and probiotics is a natural one. It's a leap that they've begun to make themselves.
Okay. What you said, gastrointestinal distress, are there specific conditions? I know you can't promise to cure them, but are there specific conditions people come to you and say, I have IBD, I have Crohn's, or just, my stomach hurts whenever I eat? What are they telling you that they need help with?
Yeah, so again, I'm not a medical professional. If there's, certainly if there's any of those conditions that were just mentioned, we recommend seeking out the advice of your doctor. But, I would say broadly categorized is that people recognize that there's something wrong inside of them. In fact, this is how the company was founded, was that Richard himself had some serious GI distress and ended up in the hospital for a period of days. And that was sort of the birth of the company is recognizing that there's the feeling of something wrong inside, and hence the name Thryve Inside.
Okay. So what would be the process? They come to you, they say, something's wrong with my stomach. Do you go through this assessment process with them? What happens?
Right. Again, consumers that access the website will typically be prompted by a series of questions, and they follow a journey. We typically don't interact directly with them in a face-to-face manner. The business is driven by online businesses. So depending on the reason that the website is accessed, it can be a range of concerns. Sometimes people are concerned about the connection between their with their weight or with their mood, et cetera. So there could be a variety of reasons that people would want to that seek out the microbiome testing, and then from there they are sort of navigate their own journey, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, when I did it, the first thing is you guys sent me a kit, and I sent you a sample. You analyzed it, and then you came back with a recommendation. And what I did is, before I even got the recommendation, I got your I guess I don't know how many different generic ones there are, but I got one generic, started taking that, and I did feel better. It seemed to, I don't know, I guess I felt like I digested faster, and I just went to the bathroom more easily. And then I got the personalized one, and I just found that the generic actually, in a weird way, was better for me than the personalized one. But I started taking both. but the process was, again, sent you the sample, got that stuff back, and then I started getting it regularly. So, that's what I experienced.
Yeah, so I think people are surprised by the kits. Certainly, those who don't know about microbiome testing, it certainly makes for fun conversation. But certainly the notion of sampling your own stool and sending it back, and then based on that being presented with a number of options is both interesting and I'm glad to hear that you experience some benefits as well.
Yeah. I haven't sent you another sample, but how often is it recommended that people would send in another sample to see how things have changed, and if they should get a different personal mix?
That's a great question, and that's one that we're entering into a range of research projects right now. What's extremely fascinating about the microbiome is that it turns over so quickly. So within with a period of a couple of days, actually, whether you change your diet, or there's even been some studies more recently about changing your exercise protocol. Certainly changing your environment, visiting a new country and changing your food, that all can, the biota within your GI tract can change very quickly. And so we wouldn't necessarily recommend sampling every 4 days or so, but one certainly could expect to see changes on that time frame. In terms of normal use cases, I think that every 6 months or once per year is sort of a good time to revisit and check in with the latest evolution in the products.
Okay. And what have you guys learned from, I don't know, I'm sure you've seen like thousands and thousands of samples, but, with that data, how is that going to inform you guys to do new products and change what you're doing?
Yeah. So what's interesting about this business is that we wouldn't believe the amount of inbound interest we get from a range of academic, more recently academic, but also just companies that are interested in doing research in this space. And so, obviously there's a variety of product pairings that we could do sort of in the same avenue of GI distress or mood. But one of the more recent trends we've seen is just an interest in using our product or our services as a research tool. And so out of that, we're actually beginning to move into some research offerings as well. So what continues to fascinate me about this field is obviously it's still early on, and just the range of opportunities for this company, I think, is quite broad. And so we look forward to some of the both academic and industrial partnerships that we're beginning to pursue, and certainly over time you can expect to see some new things from us.
Yeah, no, you could say some stuff, other stuff, it's proprietary or not ready, but what can you say about some of the big initiatives that you guys are working on? Where do you want to make an impact?
Well, certainly. So we're focused on the consumer space for now, and what I can say is that probiotics are one, but there's a variety of other. The microbiome spans oral health and skin, and there has been interest that we've received in expanding into potential other areas of the body as well. So that's a pure, looking at pure product offerings as in the model that we have now of pairing the testing with a consumer-like product. But in the future, we may end up, just offering services as well, just pure testing services.
Yeah, I guess oral, there's not that delay of having digested whatever you've eaten to see what the microbes are doing. But maybe it won't be as revealing as fecal samples. Certainly it'd be a lot easier to provide them on demand versus fecal samples, and for some people less icky. But so I guess oral is a big play, and for women, their feminine health, vaginal microbiome is one, skin. I guess there's tons of areas you can go into.
Absolutely, and going back to your previous point about oral, I think it's 80 or so % of your immune system is located within your intestinal tract. And so that's, regardless, that there's reason that there is so much testing going on there. And I think that a lot of sort of the evidence-based stuff will continue to come out of that area. But just in terms of breadth of the art of what's possible in the future and what people are beginning to talk about, that's some of the news that we're hearing if you have your ear to the ground, so to speak.
Yeah. Any new studies or papers that have come out that are changing the direction of what you guys are doing? Were there any clinical trials in play that you're keeping your eye on that may be revealing?
I wouldn't say any in particular. Certainly there's some themes that we've seen that are coming out a lot more. I just mentioned one in exercise, and for instance, there was a study. I can send you the link to this, but there was a study not too long ago showing the difference in response between obese individuals as well as healthy individuals who undertook exercise regimes and had different responses to just their microbiome, just by virtue of their BMI, was responded differently to exercise regimes. So there's all types of nuances that are coming out. So I would say that really in the health and fitness industry is an area. And the other area that I think is quite interesting to look at is just, there are projects like the American Gut Institute that are ongoing, and certainly their findings and methodologies and publications are always something to watch for. Just that's a really great group that's making some good progress on the research front as well.
Okay. Well, very good. Any comments you hear from people that again they're worried about when providing the sample, or when taking the probiotics? Are people afraid of anything, or they're like, yeah, let's try it?
That's a good question. I think maybe 5 years ago people would have been a little bit more scared, but I think that now that companies like 23andMe or personal, the sort of consumer-based genetic testing has become available, and I think just because of the advances with medicine and I think it's an old joke at this point with the FMT, the fecal transports, which are showing that they're actually quite efficacious in certain disease areas. I think that just because of that news and awareness and behavior, that people don't really bat an eye once they hear about services like ours or products like ours. I think that the main issue, quite honestly, is just awareness that such an item exists, and whether or not they can afford it. So that's another area that we're making great progress is the affordability of our testing compared to some of the others that are out there.
Yeah, I've also noticed it takes 6 weeks to get a result. It takes a long time. Is there a reason why it takes so long for some companies, and can you guys shorten that time lag? Just
to be frank, the time. So this industry in general, and I would say a lot of these testing services are heavily tied to the tools that are used, the sequencers and the sample preparation that actually goes into doing the chemical analysis and data processing of the sample. And so I would say over time, certainly as volumes increase, both prices and time to result will, lower prices and shorter times to results, definitely. And so the time does vary, and I agree with you. It can be long sometimes, but sometimes it's just is a matter of whether you hit a good week or a bad week in terms of the volume of samples that are being processed by the lab at any given time. So certainly that's an area that we expect to see improve over time.
Makes sense. Any other breakthroughs that you can talk about that you're excited to see, or that you think are coming in the next couple of years?
What really strikes me, what I really like about Thryve and this space is that 10 years ago, DNA testing or the types of consumer-based DNA testing that you're seeing now were virtually non-existent. Websites, if you had one, didn't do much. Companies that were delivering products via mail order didn't exist. And so, when I look at, and certainly doing clinical trials or doing research projects via mail order, so to speak, were fewer and far between. And just the advances in the supply chain logistics, and just in technology in general have really, I think we're really beginning to see a lot of opportunities, in particular, in the research space. So a minute ago, you asked about upcoming research studies, and I just, what I expect to see is a lot more. There's some regulatory changes that are going on, having to do with allowing real world evidence to be counted as evidences for progressions in clinical trials. And I just think that there's so much opportunity that will come out once, as these forces come together and the research community begins to really dig into some of the findings that we're only beginning just now to uncover.
Well, very good. Are you guys involved in any clinical trials that you can say?
So I can't speak openly about that, but what I can say is that it's certainly an area that we're interested in, and it is within our roadmap.
Okay, well, excellent. So what's the best way for people to find out more about Thryve? Just go to thryveinside.com or? I mean, certainly the main information is at thryveinside.com. We've had a couple of conference appearances, and certainly anyone's welcome to reach out with questions. It's just what continues to fascinate us is just the amount of people that do reach out, and we love hearing from folks, and happy to both answer questions and talk about small projects that the individuals want to have, or small companies, et cetera. So it's really, really, really exciting. So you can just shoot us an email, access online, and we'd be happy to chat. Okay, excellent. Well, Jonathan, thank you for coming. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Richard. Yeah, and if look forward to being in touch, and congratulations on a wonderful podcast.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you.
You're listening to the Future Tech Health Podcast with Richard Jacobs. Until I reached age 40, I never realized the obvious, that we all have medical issues, or we at least have a family member or close relation that has, or will have them in the future. Medicine and biological systems are the final frontier. Until we've conquered death, figured out how life began, cured cancer, and understood our purpose in the universe, there's a heck of a lot to talk about when it comes to our health. Future Tech Health means I'll be covering futuristic topics that are actually already in clinical trials, or even starting to appear on shelves or by prescription, or available for your own use. We dive deep into stem cells, CRISPR-Cas9, the science of sleep, epigenetics, medical testing, cancer, ketogenic diets, stem cells, aging, regenerative medicine, and more. My goal for you, the listener, is to learn from these podcasts. You may very well learn something that may change the course of your life for the better, steer you towards a new career, or give you insight into addressing a serious medical problem. Remember, however, this podcast and its content is informational in nature only. No medical, tax, legal, financial, or psychological advice is being given. If you enjoy the podcast, please listen, subscribe, like, and share it with friends. Thank you.